Hello and welcome to another episode of Masters of PR Live. I am your host Vikram Kharvi. Every week, I get the privilege of speaking to communications leader who not only tell stories but shape them, build them, and use them to move people and organizations forward. Today's guest is someone who embodies thoughtful, purpose-driven communication at its best. She has worked across telecom, pharma, education, technology, and global matrix organizations, leading communications during change, transformation, mergers, cultural shifts, ESG, DEI, and lot more. She believes in communication. She believes that communication is not just what you say, but how you lead. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Usha Iyer, Corporate Communications Head at TransUnion CIBIL. Usha, welcome to Masters of PR Live. It's a genuine pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Vikram. Good evening to you and to everyone else. Thank you so much for having me here. But I have to say, Vikram, before you proceed, we should just, for the sake of at least this one episode, rename it Students of PR and not Masters of PR. I think I'm still very much a student, still very much on a learning journey. Student not just of PR, but of life itself. So I would like to start and preface this by saying that there is a good chance you and the others here will not hear anything too new or too original. I'm here more to help anyone else along the way, anyone who thinks they're stuck or they have a similar story, just to sort of give a glimmer of hope or share my life lessons in the hope that it'll help. And of course, that everything I share is in my personal capacity.
We'll figure as we move forward if we are listening to a student or a pastor. So let people decide what it is. Okay. A communicator doesn't choose the craft, it is said. The craft chooses them. So, I would like to know what first pulled you towards the world of communication and what moment did you realize that this was more than a career, but a calling?
It's a great question, and you framed it so well. And in fact, I think your question has helped me frame my thoughts around how I describe my foray and journey in comms and PR also. Interestingly, I have a PhD in history. I thought for the longest time I would be an academic, academic research, universities, research papers. That was my forte. I
and
worked a
someone
lot
was
with.
just telling, and someone was just telling that, you were a student after being a PhD in doctorate. Yeah,
But it,
right.
it, it does come together, doesn't it? You are a student for life. The more you a PhD only teaches you that you know only a drop in the knowledge of in the ocean of knowledge, and the more you learn, the more you realize that the more you realize how little you know about the world. So if that wasn't humbling enough, I think as a historian, working with archives really opened my eyes to the world of historical legacy stories. There's so much buried in the legacies and histories and stories of companies, in governments, in countries. I used to use archives as a historian. I had the opportunity to actually put that knowledge to use when I was hired to work as an archivist for a leading pharmaceutical company in Bombay. And the whole point was to put together the story of the company. It had a long, very proud legacy, especially nation building in supplying essential medicines. So, in putting together the story, I realized the power of storytelling in communication. It was all about those little instances in the company's history that made the company distinguished and stand out. The instances that the company had helped the country become stronger, had helped to strengthen laws, had led the way in so many breakthrough innovations, had improved and enhanced the lives of patients and caregivers. At the same time, employees felt such a sense of pride listening to these stories. Over a period of time, the more I read about the kind of media coverage, the kind of stories that the company had got, the more I realized that stories are common both to history and archives as well as communication.
Yeah.
So that's how I went from academia and history to employee engagement, internal communication, to PR and overall corporate communication. One thing led to the other, and I have to say you framed it really well. I think you're right. The craft calls out to you. That's how you find your calling. There was no one aha moment. It was a pretty smooth journey, and I was well into the journey before I realized how comms had drawn me into its fold. But yeah, that's how it all came together.
I think you're pretty unique. I haven't heard of any historian joining the comms domain. So great that we have you
But is
in our
that
show.
a testament to the fact that this profession does not close its doors to anyone? Your background could be in history, it could
Yes,
be in biology, you could be an
totally.
engineer, you could be a zoologist. This profession is open to everyone. Anyone who's interested in leveraging its power can do so.
Yep. I mean, that has its own pros and cons. Like
Yeah.
everybody cannot be a doctor, but anyone and everyone who thinks they can become a PR person can become a PR person. So yeah, the two sides of the coin though. Uh,
Very true.
every organization also has a heartbeat and communications must sync with it. So when you step into a new organization, what's your approach to understand its true DNA, the culture beneath the organization chart, and shaping communications that aligns with it?
I think it's a great question. Decoding the DNA, as you hinted, probably because of the way my journey in communication has evolved. I set a lot of store by legacy and history. That is the company knowing where it's come from and learning and completely deep diving into its business model and its business imperatives. That goes to show
Mm,
where you're going to. So, where a company has come from and where it wants to reach, I think these are two
mm,
things any good communicator or a PR person needs to immerse themselves in. From the various organizations that I've been a part of, I've realized just how important the legacy of a company is to its owners. If it's a promoter family held business, for them it's extremely important because they've nurtured the business through generations in the family. Equally important is where is the next phase of growth coming from, what's the landscape looking like, what is the competition looking like, what are the revenue generating streams. Equally important for the communicator to roll up their sleeves and learn all of that. So, where you're coming from and
mm,
where you want to
mm,
be, these are two things no one can escape. These are two things that help you understand the organization's DNA. This is the legacy and this is its aspiration. These two things help you design your communication strategy. And before that, make you a well respected senior leader in the company.
mm,
So, there is
mm.
no escaping, there is no shortcut to any of this. Learn about how the company came about more often than not, and I guarantee you it's almost 99.9% of the time I cannot think of a deviation from this. All leaders, be they family owned or otherwise, are proud of how the company has come up. There is always a story of pride, of hardship, blood, sweat and tears behind every company, and it served a purpose in the country's sort of history or international history. Find out those stories, absorb them, and make sure you understand and communicate them. And the other is where the next leg of growth is going to come from, what are the business priorities right now, and marry the two.
Mm.
I think that, I would say, is how you can really create a customized but also a unique communication strategy. And it will be based on facts, it's authentic. So you're not sort of sugarcoating anything, and you're not drawing on sort of baseless facts for anything. So these are the two pillars I would call out.
Amazing. I'm sure by the end of this session, everybody will be half PhD in communication. Right. In moments of change, clarity is comfort and communication is courage. You've led communication during restructures, mergers, and transformation journeys. What's your framework for managing change with empathy and clarity?
Right off the bat, change management, I think, is a very tricky time for any company, but it's also inevitable. Changes could be because of, like you mentioned, restructuring. It could be because of a merger and acquisition having taken place. It could be because the company is going through new generations or churns in leadership. It could be moving from a family owned business to completely professional, or it could be changing hands within the family. There could be a number of changes taking place. It could even be a business pivot. Formerly a company was known for something and it was now going to look at or structure its businesses in a different way with a different objective, with a different target market. It can get very overwhelming all at once. And I can't say I've mastered or excelled, or there is, or I can blurt out one equation or formula to successfully handle the situation. But two words that you mentioned, empathy and clarity, are most important. Empathy
Mhm.
because a churn of this sort, of any sort, can be a very tricky time for internal stakeholders. And by internal stakeholders, I mean all the associates, the colleagues, the employees in the company across ranks will be worried about their future, about everything that the company has stood for until then, what's next, both what's in it for the company as well as what's in it for me. Who's going to give me information? How are things stationed? Will new people mean completely new regimes, new ways of working, etc.? For the outside world, here's a company we've respected for a really long time. Is it going to completely change 180 degrees overnight? Is it going to still stand for all the things we love about this company, the values that this company espoused? There's going to be a lot of questions. New leaders, are they up to the task? There is a proud legacy in a company, or the company has been built on its strengths. Will the strengths still be retained? So internally and externally, your work is cut out. Internally, having your finger on the pulse, making sure there are constant connects within the company between the top management, both outgoing and incoming, are connected to the company, are speaking in one voice, are clarifying to everyone what's next, where things stand, and why the change is taking place. Externally speaking, constantly communicating at regular intervals. Of course, there are regulatory obligations and other obligations to keep in mind. Why the change is happening, the next steps, all of this is going to be extremely important. I think some companies have managed these transitions better than others, in terms of incoming and outgoing leaders speaking in one voice, being extremely clear about 2-3 very clear reasons why changes are taking place and what's next, where they stand and what the aspiration is, assurance of taking everyone together, putting on a show of strength. These have been some things that have been very important to change management situations. Here's where a communicator can really play a really sort of strong and central role in this. You become your business leader's right hand in having a finger on the pulse internally. They could be through surveys, through town halls. You create forums for them to disseminate their message and to have a ear open for what's coming in, what are people saying, so that the messaging can be powerful. And ditto for the outside world. What is the media saying, what are external stakeholders saying, regulators, partners, customers, what is everyone saying? You're the one bringing in all this information, and you're the one helping them tailor the messaging to suit all of these needs. So in the end, very much empathy towards everyone, because not everyone's going to immediately quick on the uptake. Clarity, yes, because there is a certain reason why this is happening. As long as the world knows the reasons, there'll be less reason to be suspicious of the change or to take a negative view of the change. In all cases, openness, transparency helps. You don't have to reveal absolutely everything threadbare, but as long as you're known to be a company that's open to questions, that does not hide behind a no comment, or does not completely go completely missing or unavailable, I think that's where you really play a role. You are a spokesperson as a communicator to the outside world. Managing those stakeholders is one of your biggest responsibilities. So constantly staying available, constantly assuring, translating that message in a way the outside world understands. I think these have been key to handling these situations. Like I said, not that there is any one formula or one way of excelling in it, but that's generally what I would suggest anyone going through such a situation.
Interesting. You must have heard this: diversity is invited, inclusion is welcome, equity is enabled, and belonging is felt. So DEI often risk becoming a jargon in large companies. How can communicators help organization move from checkbox initiatives to true behavioral and cultural shifts?
So it's a great question, and I've been lucky to have worked with organizations that are serious about this agenda, or at least to me have taken very tangible and substantial measures. But equally, one can see a lot of entities, entities are accused of greenwashing or paying lip service to this agenda. I think it's a question that does not have an easy answer. In one word, I would tell you exactly what I've said for the other areas: authenticity. It's the first thing that comes to mind. Let's be very honest. When it comes to DEI, seeing is believing. As a communicator, you can say a lot of things. You can write up testimonials. You can create all your messaging around it. But if you don't have real substantial steps taken in that direction, I think it's going to become very difficult for a communicator or a PR person to build a convincing case for that company. on an organization wide basis, of course, like you pointed out, I mean, it has to be inbuilt in a multi-layered way. Every business unit, every function, right from hiring to leadership changes to we're talking about diversity in that sense, sustainability, and when it comes to emissions or your carbon footprint and so on and so forth, all of that needs to be built into ways of working of a company. Otherwise, the authenticity does not come through in communication. You will struggle beyond a point to convince the world that it's all real. That said, as a communicator, I think there are a few things you can keep in mind. When if you are passionate about this agenda and you want to make a difference as a communicator, one of the most powerful things we have at our disposal is language. Is your
Mm.
language in everyday communication, internally and externally, inclusive, in every way possible? Are you trying to stay very conscious of, when you're reporting something, be it in your everyday leadership communication, in your press releases, in your annual reports? Is your language staying mindful of the fact that, it needs to sound inclusive? It needs to be conscious of where there might be gaps in its sustainability agenda or its DEI agenda. Are you being mindful of this? I think that is something in a communicator's a language of that sort is at the disposal of every communicator. It needs to come through in everyday actions. So to sum it up, I would say, I've had the privilege of working with companies that have actually built this into every step of the way. Testimonials, case studies, all of this has been easy. There's been external validation. But if you had to, as a communicator, single-handedly lead change in this area, start with yourself and your communications mandate. Use the language, use the everyday actions available at your disposal, and start from there.
Perfect. You worked with a lot of matrix organization, and matrix global organization come with layers, stakeholders,
Yeah.
and competing priorities. What has helped you stay effective, aligned, and influential in such environments?
Absolutely, yes. Global companies, typically speaking, you have your regional reporting, and then you have your global enterprise functional reporting, multiple bosses, multiple key stakeholders. That's an everyday reality for all those of us who work with corporates of a certain or organizations of a certain size or type. One of the things I've realized, and this has been a life lesson for me, is as you gain more and more experience, as you grow further in your career, and as they call it somewhat crudely, up the value chain, your even as a PR and communications person, your work moves from tasks to adding greater and greater value.
Hmm.
So while you may, the actual writing of press releases and social media messages and other media collaterals may fall to your team members, your job very much is managing your function within such a global matrixed organization.
Yeah.
Be it your
Yeah.
stakeholders or business leaders in the region, be it your employee communication HR stakeholders in the region, be it your global functional stakeholders, your bosses in the enterprise sort of global function. Is your work as a team, are you and your team adding value? Are you and your
Hmm.
team fully sort of in sync with the current conversations on business, in current conversations that are going on in the company? There will be expectations from the region, there'll be expectations from the headquarters and the global enterprise function. Are you constantly in conversation? The key to this, I think, would be open stakeholder communication, constantly keeping in touch with all of these stakeholders, regularly touching base with them, running your work by them, making sure that they see the value that is being added, or if there's course correction needed, go back to that. Are you either adding value or solving for something constantly? Are you working along the lines
Hmm.
that was expected? Does anything need realignment? Are you constantly looking at the bigger picture? As a leader, your job
Hmm.
is to look at the bigger picture. All leaders need to sort of strike this balance of bigger picture and the everyday priorities. But uh, the bigger picture, that is the strategic priorities of the company, that is something you need to grow into as a leader, and translate that for your team. So you become the bridge between all of these sort of stakeholders, be it in the region or be it in your global enterprise, and you need to translate that for your team. So that's a very crucial role in global organizations. Hence, open stakeholder communication, constantly checking in, not working in silos, and not mistaking everyday small tasks for the big
Hmm.
strategic wins. That's the
Hmm.
key so far in my career I've seen has it stood me in good stead.
Right? You just summed up like you spoke about all in the organization should sound same. Great brands sound the same inside the building as they do outside. Many companies say one thing externally and live another internally. What's your method for ensuring authenticity so the message outside reflects the reality inside?
Uh, it's a great question. Honestly, again, just like with the DEI and sustainability question, I mean, so much of it depends on what you're given to work with. Of course, goes without saying. As a communicator, you represent the company and its essence, and you have to work with what you have. Authenticity, we keep coming back to that. It's extremely important. There are so many brands. Like you said, if your internal and external narratives don't match, it's going to show, and it's going to show you up very quickly also, be it in
Mm,
terms of not being able to attract good talent or not being able to retain the talent that's in the company. Or if you think why you're coming off, and if you do a media dipstick, often you get to hear murmurs about companies that are sort of, we know what's really going on. You get to hear from reporters say, I know what's really going on in that company, even though they're saying XYZ, I know there's something else going on. So, you can't actually contain or hide this gap between internal and external, however much you may try. Which is why, it's very important to maintain that consistency. I would go back here to knowing the DNA of the company. We discussed decoding the DNA of the company, and I mentioned where the companies come from, the kind of things that it was built on, and where they want to go. Usually, the key to cracking a company's DNA lies in these two things. And if you understood them well, I think you've largely solved for the expectations of the leaders as well as the employees. And that's also staying true to the roots as well as the aspiration. So while there is
mm,
no clear cut answer, and I can't tell you one way or the other, this is the right thing to do over here, I would say go back, understand the essence of the company so that your expectations as a communicator and hence your messaging are not sort of removed from each other. If you want to be in sync with your leaders and the direction of the company, understand where it's come from and understand where it wants to go. That's your sort of sweet spot. That's the zone you need to play in to make sure you're also consistent and you've not overstated or understated the company's case.
mm. Like politicians, there is one narrative that often circles around in every conference events that we go, and that is about the seat at the table. Do you believe communication has finally earned its seat at the leadership table, or is it still a battle in many organizations? And if it's so, what needs to change?
Vikram, I think we are doing a major disservice to the communications profession by adding a question mark at the end of the sentence of the question. I think that's not and I'm sure you hear this from a lot of people also. But I don't think it's a question. I think that's been answered and that's been proven. Again, I don't think it's down to, we cannot paint the entire profession with a single brush. In terms of
Hmm.
earning a seat at the table or being valued, no doubt about it at all. There is no doubting the value of communications and PR in any company, from
Hmm.
your big mergers and acquisitions to announcements, launches, reports, consumer awareness. It's your PR and communication team that's running point on everything. Come a crisis time or disclosures to the outside world, it's your PR and communication that's stepping up. Be it internal communication, employee communication, ensuring that leaders are in sync with the company, it's your communication and PR team again to the forefront. So there's no doubting the value that the profession brings. Equally, I would say there's also no doubting how thankless everything can feel all the time. And you're not. I often say this. I mean, you mentioned politicians and others. It's a bit like if you worked for the intelligence services, you're probably it's that one bomb blast that happened that's talked about, and not the 99 ones that were foiled by the
Hmm.
intelligence agency.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
PR
Hmm.
and Corpcom tends to be a lot like that. The number of times you've stepped up, won the day for the company goes fairly unacknowledged. It's the one or two times where something has happened in spite of best efforts. That's the one that gets discussed. So there's no doubting the thanklessness of the job. I suspect that goes equally for many other functions. And I'm
Yes.
sure that all the other sister functions that work in a company also have these same conversations when they talk to each other. So I think
Yeah.
we need to stop self doubt. self-doubt is going to is the self-doubt and imposter syndrome that we're often told about. I think as a
Mm,
profession there's a lot of that going around also. We need to come out of that. I think more than enough individuals and leaders within our profession have proven to us how value can be added. So it's not about whether the profession can add value or not. I think it's as an individual leader, as a communication and PR
mm.
leader, you earn the respect of the company. You prove that you can add value to it. You've rolled up your sleeves, understood and invested time in understanding the company's business imperatives, its business model, its aspirations, its history. You've demonstrated enough emotional intelligence to navigate the challenges of the landscape. So if you've done all of this, I think the profession would have more than earned the respect of the company, and that will show up in everyday decisions, actions, how you are included as part of decision making, huddles and so on and so forth. So I don't think the profession needs to question its importance anymore, but it's up to us as leaders to roll up our sleeves, demonstrate that emotional intelligence, demonstrate that value add, and pretty much rightfully sit at the seat that's been earmarked for us.
I love this answer of yours. And thank you so much for that. I'm sure people who are listening will also love this. Let's come
Thank
to
you.
the another buzzword, AI. AI might accelerate. Yeah. So AI might accelerate communication, but only humans can give it intention. While AI is definitely reshaping workflows, content, and insights, how do you see communicators using technology without losing the nuance, empathy, and the human instinct?
Vikram, I think this is exactly like the previous question. The previous one continues to have a question mark, and this one continues, in much of the conversation that we hear around us, continue to have an alarmist overtone, not even an undertone. It's a very explicit alarmist
Mm,
overtone to it. There's AI, and what
mm.
do we as communicators do? We think it's an existential threat? Is it going to change the world as we know it, and so on? And I think enough people with much more knowledge than me, both technical competence in AI as well as otherwise, have told us that, of course, there will be a lot of changes to the way we do work. For much of it, it will be complementary. It'll probably help us get better at our work on a daily basis. Even as communicators, we can see that be it content creation, be it online reputation management, and the many tools and the many offerings that are opening up now. All of this will work to our advantage. There's only one condition, I think, that'll run as a common theme through all of this. Are we willing to learn? Are we willing to
Mm.
upskill? Are we willing to embrace all of it? I think what will change is not AI or technology replacing humans. It will be what's expected of us as communicators. I think we need to get into the thick of things here, learn how these tools work, update ourselves, upskill ourselves, because the ask from communicators will probably keep changing. We will not be replaced. Ask from us will be replaced. So that willingness to learn more than anything else is going to be key to all of this.
Oh, coming to my next question, this will be purpose. So, purpose, like you say, it's not a campaign; it's a commitment. Purpose is a big theme in our work, and
Yeah.
every company needs to have a purpose of their own. How do you personally find meaning in your role as a communicator, and how do you help teams create communications that are anchored in the real purpose and not really optics?
Yes, you're right. This is another much used word, and I often grapple with it. It seems like so much bigger than me, so much bigger than my work. Um, I'll define it the way I interact with the word, my understanding of the word or my absorption of the word. I have almost, I think, without exception, worked for companies in the essential services sector, what would be called essential services.
Mm, yeah.
Um, for me, that was always the starting point. If you have to find purpose in your work as a communicator, you need to be sure of which company you're with and what you're representing. I'm the spokesperson for the company, so I need to be completely convinced that the work that I am taking to the people and to a multitude of stakeholders outside is worth it, is meaningful, and is contributing to society in a meaningful manner. So, being in an essential service, I think, has been of extremely high importance to me. I've also realized over a period of time that my work has been not only in an essential service sector, but has also been with highly regulated companies. One way or the other, there's extremely high level of regulation, and that necessarily means you as a communicator, you have your nose to the grindstone constantly. It's a challenge I take up very happily. Within the constraints of the regulation and this essential service, how can I craft my company's communication strategy so that it's constantly adding value to the company? It's a challenge I've taken on very happily, and that gives me that sense of satisfaction of having done a job well. Goes without saying, authenticity, we've been using this word a lot. Everyone uses the word a lot, but we do really, I mean, in communication more than so many other functions, authenticity is important. We discussed it before, because if your narratives don't align, you're going to get shown up very easily. There's only so far you can go.
Yeah.
Again, as a life lesson, one of the things I've realized is I have not, I mean, it's not been about chasing titles. It's not been about chasing whom I'm reporting to. It's not been about chasing which business unit I'm based in. I hear career conversations often within the communication and PR profession that, progress is marked by, I used to report to X person, X title. Now my boss is this Y title. And I hope that next it needs to be Z or no one else. I mean, it can't be anyone different. It's not the person you report to that's going to teach you new things. It's not your job title in the end that's going to teach you new things. It's not which business unit you're placed in that's going to teach you new things. It's your willingness to grow and your willingness to realize that in order to stay relevant in these times, you need to expand your skill set. That learning can come vertically, it can come laterally, it can come through adding new things. It's about are you constantly unlocking your value and adding value to the organization? That's the only way you will grow. So that's the challenge I've set myself as a communicator. Don't chase vanity metrics, chase where your next learning and leadership can be unlocked.
Perfect. You very well said. The next era of communication belongs to those who can blend authenticity with agility. So I agree with that totally. And now my final question, looking ahead, what's the next big trend or a shift or an opportunity in communications that you are genuinely excited about exploring? Don't tell me about AI. We already discussed AI.
I have absolutely no intention of saying anything about AI. I'll be very honest. I mean, this answer may end up, it's the last question, and I hope we're not ending on an anti-climax. It's nothing thrilling. My two-word answer to you is going to be staying relevant. Staying relevant. That's the,
Yes.
I think we live in these are interesting times, and interesting is an interesting word also. I'm not completely convinced myself whether I'm using it in a positive sense or a negative sense, but we live in interesting times, the times that afford us, you can be flexible, agile, you can learn, any number of learning opportunities are available. We know there's talk of AI sort of changing the way communications is conducted. There are various geopolitical realities at work. There are strategic changes happening in every company. What are you doing to secure your future, not just in terms of your career, but also that of your profession and your function in the company? I think that can only be done by constantly evolving yourself, learning new things, making yourself more and more useful to the function as well as the company. So my next challenge, or what keeps me excited, what keeps me coming back to work, is how am I going to add value today, and how am I equipping myself to add value even 5 years from now? Just staying relevant. I think that's the next challenge to myself.
Perfect. Usha, thank you for this deeply grounded, insightful, and human conversation. You reminded us that communication isn't just about messaging, it's about meaning. It's about people, culture, and purpose. To everyone watching, the student of communication, if today's conversation resonated, please share your thoughts in the comments. Spread the learning with our teams and follow Wikipedia for more such dialogues with readers shaping the future of our craft. Sorry. Until next time, keep communicating with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. Thank you, Usha. I'm sorry
Thank you,
for this.
Vikram. Not at all. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.